Hi everyone, I'm Charmaine Marlowe. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni and Employer Collaborations at Western Sydney University. Welcome to the first session in the Skills Activate series, Mastering the Art of Public Speaking and Presenting. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all meet today. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Indigenous people joining this webinar. I have to say, as I'm seeing the numbers climb, I am so excited as a Western alum myself about how many of our Western alumni community are joining us for this event. It is a goal of the alumni team to be providing lifelong career-related education, and that's exactly why we've put a series like this together. So without further delay, and as I see the numbers creeping up more, I'll introduce our facilitator tonight, Luke Hannan. Luke is one of Australia's most experienced, energetic and engaging professional conference and event MCs. He truly understands what it takes to keep the atmosphere electric. Across his MC career, Luke has partnered with clients such as Westpac, Google and IBM to deliver over 400 seamless live and virtual events. And today we are fortunate enough to have him sharing his expertise with all of us. So over to you, Luke.
Charmaine, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon, good day, good morning, wherever you're joining us from, to each and every one of you. Alumni, I love that word. I love that word. It's a few simple letters, but it does mean so much more, doesn't it? That each and every one of you have built the foundations to succeed in life. That each and every one of you have gone through the trials, tribulations, that is university coursework. And I guess today represents another tiny little step in that journey, maybe a bigger step for some than others. But today we're going to talk about all things presenting and public speaking. So g'day and welcome to each and every one of our alumni. It's a real pleasure to be joining you. Now, when we speak, and Kelly writes, joining from Darugland, that's where I'm from. I live in Greystanes, so I'm a proud Darug native. My whole life's been in Greystanes. So Kelly, thank you for the comment. When we speak, when we present, when we try and connect with people, quite often the message just doesn't get through. The people aren't responding in the way that we thought, and it's often hard to pinpoint why that is. So I guess over the next hour or so, we're going to have a little bit of chat around things that I've seen work, things that I haven't seen work over my career as a speaker, as a university student, and as an event MC. I do get to see my fair share of keynotes and, of course, take the stage quite a bit as a moderator and an MC, and I'd love to share those lessons with you. It's going to be a pretty interactive session. We were going to try the breakout functionality, but I'll tell you what, the subscription for this event has gone through the roof and we broke Zoom. So what we're going to do, for those of you who aren't joining from your mobile phone, I'd ask a very technical question about getting a recording device. In other words, grab your mobile phone when the time's right and get ready to record yourself, because feedback is the breakfast of champions. And so today, each and every one of us are going to be having a great breakfast of feedback, and that's in the form of watching yourself present. Now, I believe there might have been some pre-work that's gone out, a short 30-second speech. It could be who you are, what you do, what really fascinates you, what you love doing. And over the course of today, we're going to talk about some tools, some tips, some tricks to help you deliver that message with more power. But I'd love you to record yourself doing it during our session and then play it back and really critically analyze what you saw. Now, I had a university teacher once that said, be critical, but be critical with a view to improve, not to destroy. So be critical, but be critical with a view to improve and not to destroy. So when you look back upon your own recordings today, it might not be the Barack Obama speech from history, but view it with a view to improve. What could you do better? What did you try? And how might you improve upon that? The other thing I'd suggest is grab a pen, grab a paper and take some notes. Now, I'll send an abridged version of these slides out, so fear not, you don't have to write everything down that's on the slide. You'll get yourself a copy of those. But if you find something that's interesting, write it down. Next, and most importantly, the chat function is open. So type a comment in. Kelly's written a comment, so is Usman, Nalika, and Zandro has also written a comment. Zandro joining us from the Blue Mountains. Shout out to the Blue Mountains in winter. It gets pretty cold up there. I do love the mountains. So type a comment in the chat. We'd love to hear from each and every one of you. We'll be opening for questions, and I'll probably hang around 15 or so minutes after the session as well for some Q&A. Now, I do have some slides to present. We're going to share the screen, and you should see half me, half the slide. So this will be the first technological achievement of the day. Strap yourself in. We are mastering the art of public speaking, as we have said. Now, the first thing about public speaking is that speaking itself, well, it is a journey. That's a journey. Each and every one of you are on your journey in life. It could be studying coursework, postgraduate or undergraduate. It could be trying to find a job. It could be finding love. Whatever it is, life is a journey. And you're on that journey now when it comes to presenting and public speaking. For some of you, the journey might be on the top left of the slide there and relatively simple. For most of us, it's going to be down on the bottom right-hand side. It's going to be quite complex. Sometimes you're taking steps forward. Sometimes you're taking steps back. And hello to Catherine joining us from the Mid-North Coast. So remember that you're on a journey. Every time you get a chance to present in a meeting, maybe it's a one-on-one chat, maybe it's an interview, it could be a phone call, you have an opportunity to develop yourself. And so use that. Sometimes you'll fail, but with every failure comes lessons. So speaking is a journey. Remember that each and every one of you are on it. The next question is a question for you, and I'd love to see the chat explode here, is what sort of challenges do you have when it comes to public speaking? What sort of things keep you up at night when it comes to presenting? It could be chairing a meeting. Maybe it's having a one-on-one conversation. It could be asking someone out on a date. But I'd love you to type in the chat. Let's do a bit of a deep dive here, and let's find out what are some of the challenges that you get when it comes to public speaking. And we'll use the responses in the chat to steer the next stanza of our conversation. So the question is, what sort of challenges are you having? What sort of problems, concerns, fear of stumbling and embarrassing myself? Kelly, thank you. Stumbling and stuttering over my words, Rahaf writes, dyslexia. Mine goes blank, Lucy. Yeah, that's a great one. That is a good one. Not being able to, oh, Christopher, I like that one, mate. That is a ripper. Not being able to answer questions the audience may ask. The first 5 minutes before presenting anything. Sandeep, that's interesting. Bodily reactions. I'm a school teacher, speaking public all the time. Just want to do it better. Thank you, Zandro. Being succinct when articulate the point, Rana writes. Stuttering, so plenty of stuttering. Nerves coming out. Pitching. Sarah writes, I've got to read this one. Sarah writes, pitching to a room full of middle-aged men who aren't as encouraging as my female colleagues. We'll come back to that one, Sarah. That's a ripper. Santa writes, not articulating. Audience seem bored. Unresponsive audience. Ooh, okay. So quite often we get, how do you get the audience engaged? How do you make it interactive for the audience members? Well, when you're presenting virtually, the first hot tip of the day is to do exactly what I just did then. Get the audience involved very, very, very early on. Very early on. One thing that happens when we're presenting virtually is almost instantly you become a television producer. What do I mean by that? Well, think about the objective of TV or Netflix. Their objective is to keep you watching the screen, keep your attention on the screen. When you're chairing a meeting, virtually especially, or chairing a virtual event or speaking virtually, you're trying to keep people's attention on you, on a screen. That's a very different challenge to doing it live and in a meeting when you can feel the energy of the room, to the school teachers in the room that have mentioned that. So I prefer to get people engaged straight away, and I love doing it with a quick question. And the beautiful thing about Zoom and most platforms is they've got poll functionalities, which are really good to give you some statistical idea as to where people are at. But if you use the chat like we've just done, you actually see people's names and their responses. So in this case, Sharon's written the audience scene board. Sophie's written an unresponsive audience. And as we had Sarah Cooper, shout out to Sarah for the great comment, has written about pitching to a room full of middle-aged men, one of which I am. So when you use the chat, you get to see the people's name. And I would argue that the sweetest word in any language to any individual is their name. And so as soon as you mention those people's name, and I invite the people whose names I mentioned to think how they felt. When I called them out, bang, their attention came back. And for those that I didn't get a chance to get to, we still got their attention back onto the session because they're typing information into their computer and they're engaged. Probably the last thing it does, we've all been through those sessions where you're spoken at for such a long period of time. By bringing each and every one of you into our conversation like we've just done here, we're speaking together. Sawat's got their comment in there, Rana's got their comment in there, Sana's made a comment, Sophia, Osnur, Merhaba Osnur. Osnur's written a comment in there as well, Janan, Sarah. So there's so many people who've written a comment. It changes it from me speaking at you to me speaking with you. So lesson number one, get people engaged very, very early on. Thank you so much for the comments. They are steaming in. Do you find that, Michael writes a good question, this is Ripper. Do you find that people don't mind being mentioned by name? Perhaps they prefer to remain anonymous. Yeah, Michael, that's a great question. Generally in the roundtable meeting format that you're going to be a part of, I suspect it's okay. I've never had anyone complain. So let me know if you have, Michael, in the chat. That would be amazing. But generally, you could probably set your name to anonymous on Zoom if you didn't want anyone to know it anyway. So I'd probably be leaning towards no. And I guess it's a bit utilitarian in the approach that it's going to work for 99 people and it might offend one. But then you're probably going to engage most of the people. And Sharon, what she wrote just then just happened to me, as you might have noticed. It can be distracted going to individual chat messages too, and so you lose flow. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we've got over 400 people in this call today, but I do feel it's a good way to get them engaged. And Sharon's right, the chat's going to explode when you do it. All right, so we've got a bit of an idea of your challenges. Let's sink into the magic as to presenting. Now, people often say, what is communication? Well, quite simply, it's one person sending a message to someone else. At its purest level, that's what communication is. Right now, people have been sending messages to me over the chat, and I've been responding verbally. Now, another quick lesson is, as well as you all probably know this, when I speak to you, I can express my emotions, my happiness, my joy, my distraught, my anger. When I write that in a message, the reader interprets that in their own frame of mind. And that gets us to our next slide. When I'm presenting verbally or on video, I can encode the message using happiness, joy, laughter, anger, maybe a bit of stress. And that will help the receiver to decode the message in the manner that I wanted it. So if I'm really uptight about something, geez, guys, I'm really upset about this. This is really concerning me. Please help me out. That's quite an empathetic approach. Or I could say, guys, this is really upsetting me. I'm really, really angry, or I'm really upset. The same words, but with a bit more anger. It's the same words. It's the same message, but I've encoded it differently. And then you can decode that more accurately in the way I wanted you to, because you hear me speak. So the lesson there is, if you've got a really important message, don't send it by chat. Don't send it by email, because your message is going to get decoded through the lens of the person reading it, not through yours and the way you wanted it. And that's quite often when things blow up in your workplace. And I know a lot of you, proud alumni are now going to be going out to make the magic happen and change the world. If you're having problems, go and tap the person on the shoulder, pick up the phone, and it will make your communication so much more successful, because the person you're sending the message to, the receiver, will likely decode your message in the way that you've encoded it. Whereas when it's on an email, they can't do that, because you can't express emotion unless you use emojis. But let's face it, that's not too successful. Now, the last thing is feedback and noise. So feedback can be things like, well, just so I've heard you correctly, replay it to them. Just so I understand you correctly, this is really urgent because A, B, C, D, and E. The feedback loop completes the message. And then noise is what gets in the way. The noise can be our co-workers speaking. The noise can be literal noise in the room, or the noise could be stress that the receiver's got. If the receiver's having a terrible day and has been yelled at by the last 10 people, and you send them a nice email, but it's worded ambiguously and it could be treated, or it could be received as an anger message, they might take that as angry. That noise is getting in the way. Now, the reason this slide is important is because we chop this up into 3 key areas. The first is the message. Now, the message is in the middle. Why this is important is because you kind of start with the message. What is it that I want to say? Then you move across to the right-hand side. Who is my audience? And once you understand what you want to say and who the audience is, it is then that you can start to think about how you're going to deliver your key message. Because it's really difficult to try and go, well, I'm going to be really inspirational and try and bring the audience on a journey and make them think differently when you're going to make everyone redundant, if that's the message and that's your audience. Now, clearly you can still try and inspire them about their future prospects. That's going to be a bit harder because it's quite a negative message. And so we're going to break it down today. Message, audience, and delivery. The first few is quite theoretical. We'll talk about message and audience in a bit of detail. And then last but not least, we'll get on to delivery. And that's where you're going to be speaking into your phones, recording yourself and practicing some tips, some tricks, some techniques. Zandra writes a question. Talk to the one-on-one. Is that what you mean? Yeah, it could be a coaching conversation. Maybe you're in a job interview. That's probably a one-on-one situation, or sometimes you'll be in a panel interview. Maybe you're a leader, you're coaching some people. Zandra writes, the problem at school with children is I teach high school kids. The kids' audience is diverse and some listen and some don't. Yeah, 100%. 100%. A key message in that, and I get asked this question a bit, is about jokes. Should I use jokes in my presentation? Should I open with an icebreaker joke? My personal belief and the advice I always share is no. And probably some qualification to that is you need to consider the risk-reward ratio of your joke. What do I mean by that? Well, my background before I became a professional speaker was a risk manager. So I spent 22 years in banking and finance in risk management. I know it's a weird transition from risk and SaaS models and lending to public speaking. It just seemed like the right thing to do. I don't think I was ever meant to be in risk. This is what I'm supposed to do in life. The point is this. In life, you can't genuinely get a reward without taking risk. And think about that. You can't get a job without putting yourself out there in a job interview or applying for a job. You can't find love without asking someone out. There's a risk you'll get rejected. You can't generally make money on an investment unless you risk some money to make it. So you can't get a reward without taking risk. But you can take risk for little or no reward. And cracking a joke at the start of a presentation, unless it serves a very specific purpose, and I'll explain what that might be in a minute, you're taking risk for no reward. And the risk is, if you crack a joke and it bombs, and I've seen many a conference speech where the speaker has taken the stage and cracked a joke and the audience has just gone, oh my God. And they're gone. The audience is gone. You will not get them back. And then it makes it really hard for them to be engaged. And some listen and some don't. To Zandra's comment, if you lose the audience at the start, most of them won't, and they'll use your session as an opportunity to catch up on their emails. The second point there is never ever, and I'm quite firm on this one, never apologize for your time in the sun. If you're presenting at 4:30 and a drinks session is next, I would highly recommend you don't open by saying, now I know I'm standing between you and drinks. Because if I say that, and type this in the chat, I'd love to get your thoughts. When I say, now I know it's 4:30 and I'm standing between you and drinks, what is the audience going to be thinking about when I say that? What are they going to be thinking about? Now I know I'm standing between you and drinks. Now I know I'm standing between you and lunch, between you and morning tea. Exactly, drinks. Don't get them thinking about drinks. If you've taken the vodka, Santa writes, if you've been given an opportunity to connect with an audience, then use that opportunity and start strong. Like, I truly love the word alumni. I am an alumni, and I think it's powerful. It shows commitment. It shows dedication. It shows courage. It shows bravery. And so try and connect with your audience on a wavelength that's going to meet them. Probably another comment on that, and you'll notice my style of training is a little bit ad hoc, but I love to let the chat steer it, is think about what sort of presenter you're going to be. If you get to do a keynote, or if you're going to connect with people in a meeting, are you going to be the entertainer? And that's fine. Are you going to be thought-provoking? Are you going to be inspiring or changing? My personal style is quite thought-provoking. I'm going to host a lot of finance conferences, a lot of insurance events, a lot of mining, sport, but I try and connect the audience with the thought-provoking nature of the event, to try and get them thinking, open their minds, to get them thinking differently. And then you're more likely to bring them on the journey and keep their attention. Pairing my wine and cheese, Catherine writes as well. Now, last comment on jokes. The only time I've really supported a joke, I was coaching a Scottish guy. I love people from the UK. His accent was super thick. So insurance is spicy. Thanks, Rob. He cracked a joke about needing subtitles to understand him. And the reason that was really important is because, yes, it was funny, but it put the audience on notice that your speaker, am going to be hard to understand, so you're going to need to pay attention. So there you go. That's the only time I've sort of supported a joke. Let's talk about messages as we go down. All right, what is your key takeaway? What's the information? Why are you there? What structures, how best to convey? There's a lot of information here. We are having an abridged session. Another question for each and every one of you, because there's a lot of information here, but we don't have enough time. When you're running out of a time during a presentation, what do people normally do? First question. What do you think you should do? Second question. So you're running out of time in a prezzo. What do people normally do? What do you think they should do? Throw that in the chat. Let's see where our alumni minds are at. You're in a prezzo, you're running out of time. You've realized that you've only got 5 minutes to go. You thought you had 15. What should you do? Normally rush. Yeah, exactly. Rush. Prioritize. Rosanna's hit the nail on the head. Chris, they just cut it off normally. Highlight key points. Lucy is all over it as well. That's exactly right. When you are running out of time, slow down. Slow down. Focus on your key points, your key takeaways. Don't try and rush. Or you might have had 20 minutes to present, and 5 minutes before you go on stage, hey, sorry, we're running behind. You've only got 10 minutes now. That's okay. Focus on the key points. And it's okay to address the elephant in the room when you start. Now, I know this was a 20-minute presentation. We've had to compress it due to scheduling to 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is focus on the key points. You've taken the audience on a journey. Address the elephant in the room. If you're on an event and you're on stage and something goes wrong, the lights go out or someone trips over or something happens that's going to affect your ability to present, call it out. Call it out. There's no hiding behind the fact that something's just gone wrong. The whole entire audience is going to know that the lights have just gone out, for example, if there's a blackout. So don't hide behind the fact that there's a blackout. Ladies and gentlemen, the power's clearly gone out. I'd invite you to stay calm, and we'll get you back underway as soon as possible. I was at an event the other night where the power went out, and I noticed, because the lights were so bright, there was candles in everyone's desk. Now, I only noticed that when the lights went out because the lights were so bright. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in everyone's life where you need to say, I love you. This is the candlelit section of the evening, so I'd invite you to express your love to someone you may never have met before, but take a moment to tell them that you care. And then clearly we've addressed that. I'll be back in a moment. I went off stage and sorted the power out. All right. So that's a key little lesson there. When you're running out of time, slow down, don't speed up. Key takeaway. What is your key takeaway? Some of the best presenters in the world have amazing key takeaways, but it's not obvious. So my advice on key takeaways is identify it very early on, clarify it, make it early, and do it often. We're here today to talk about public speaking. Presenting is a journey, and communication is quite simply one person sending a message to the other. If you remember 2 things from this presentation, let it be that. Public speaking and presenting is a journey. And the second thing is that communication is just one person sending a message to another, and then clearly that person responding. Simple as that. Make your key takeaway clear, make it early, and make it often. So the audience takes it away, and then your key message has got through. It's the old, you tell them what you're about to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them. Make it clear. All right. Ooh, look at this slide. What a ripper. How best to convey information. Now, this is a slide from an ebook, which I believe you're going to get a copy of, which is around 8 ways I find to connect during conversation. It's a great slide for an ebook, but it's a terrible slide to present during a session. Now, I'm only doing it for an example, or to put on a conference stage, because when I put this up here, chances are each and every one of you started reading. So if you needed to present this slide in a conference, I'd present it like that. Ask questions and stay true. Then I'd talk to the information. So then I've got your attention, and I, the presenter, can take you on a journey. So again, a lot of information, and fear not, you'll get a copy of this actual ebook. There's some pretty cool stuff in there, but that's probably not what you want to put on a stage or anywhere in a meeting room, if possible, where there's a big audience, because they're just going to start reading it and you'll lose them. Make it simple. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the audience, because I want to get to the practical element of today. Who is your audience? All right, audience engagement. Now, we've touched upon this a little bit. What is your opening going to be? Are you going to crack a joke? Are you going to risk it all with a joke? Now, if you are a paid comedian, and I'm certain with 400 people here, one of you at least aspires to be a comedian. Well, if you're on stage, it's your job to tell jokes. Go for it. But for the rest of us mere mortals, and I say that with the utmost respect because stand-up comedy is a tough gig. For the rest of us, you need to consider the risk-reward ratio of a joke at the start. Think about how you're going to capture the audience very early on and inspire them. Not a big fan of introducing myself. For example, Charmaine introduced me today, so I don't need to say, hi, my name's Luke Hannan, because Charmaine just said that. So if you get introduced, you don't need to mention your name, at least not at the start. Some of the best intros I see are where people get up and they just start talking. They might mention, by the way, my name's Luke Hannan, this is what we're going to do. And I think that's what I did today. Do that. Show of hands is an interesting one. Now, for the school teachers in the room and anyone else that speaks to a crowd, I would suggest the best way to get a show of hands is not to say, put your hand up if you're wearing a hat. Because most people, with a hat or not, won't put their hand up because they're scared. Remember, when you're speaking, you are the shepherd and the audience is the sheep, with the utmost respect. You're the shepherd, they're the sheep. So what I do is say, everyone put one hand in the air. And remember, you're the shepherd. If they don't do it, ask them again. No, put one hand in the air. And then if you put your hand up, they'll respond. Audience tends to reciprocate what you do. Put one hand in the air, or everyone stand up. And I'll talk about why they're cool in a moment. But the cool thing there, or the second cool thing, is you've just broken the movement inertia because you've told everyone to stand up. So they're all standing already. Your question is then, now stay standing if you've got a hat on. Now, I know that's an obvious one because you'll know who's got a hat on or not, but that's just an example. So for the teachers in the room, try that. Everyone put one hand in the air, then ask your question. Now leave your hand up if. Now back to the second really interesting thing about that. The other thing it does is by getting people to stand up, and standing up is better than putting a hand up, of course, accessibility and so on taken into account, is that you've got their body moving. If they stand up, their heart rate will increase. If their heart rate increases, you've kind of reinvigorated them a little bit, and you've made a really cool example of something. So just on that, get them moving, get them engaged, and keep them. And you can get them to stand up once or twice. Try a different gag, maybe put your hands up, put your hands on your head, turn to the person next to you, now turn back. Get them moving, but get them engaged. Poll questions we've sort of spoken about, and I did one very early on this call. Movement, we've touched on interaction. Make your sessions as interactive as humanly possible, as humanly possible. The more you bring the audience on a journey, the more you'll be speaking with them, and the more they're likely to be engaged. And for the school teachers in the room, I remember when I was a student way back in the 90s at school, some of the best teachers I had would throw questions directly to people in the class. John, what do you think? Richard, would love your thoughts. And they're school students. They don't have a choice. They've got to respond, in theory. All right, let's move on. Ooh, connecting. Now, these bullet points here will come out in the ebook that you're going to get after this, which you saw a slide from before. But at a very high level, when you connect with people, be sure to look them in the eye. Now, virtually, that's really hard to do because, in fact, when we're on a Zoom call, we can't look each other in the eye. Because if I'm looking at the camera, you can look into my eyes whilst looking at me speaking. But if I'm looking at your eyes on my screen, then I'm looking down and you're looking at me looking down. So I get asked often, well, Luke, when I'm presenting virtually or when I'm in a virtual meeting, where should I look? Well, when you're presenting, when you're speaking, look at the camera. When you're listening, look down at the person. Because you can't look each other in the eye. And I mean, I'm sure technology one day will put a camera below your screen, but then you don't know where the person's eyes are going to be anyway. So you're kind of always going to be looking off to the side. But anyway, when you're speaking to people, look them in the eye. Show interest. Be interested. Wow, that sounds really interesting. Even if it's not, show a bit of interest. People love talking about themselves. Let them do that. And this helps with networking. Positive and debate on the right-hand side of the slide there, heading down to the what would be the 3 o'clock and maybe the 4:30 position if this was a clock. It's really hard to listen to negative people, really hard. Now, clearly it could be a negative event you're at, but try and be positive. Show a bit of respect at the bottom, genuine Q&A, so ask people interesting questions, ask some follow-ons, and most importantly, be yourself. If you're at an event where you need to be someone else other than yourself, or if you're at a job where you can't be the person that you are, then I'd strongly suggest to think about mapping out what it is you need to do to get to where you want to be, where you can be you. I love public speaking. I love presenting. Every time I take the stage, it's like Christmas morning. Now, I love my job in risk. I like coding SAS and writing models and so on and so forth. But I found my calling in life in terms of presenting and public speaking, and I love what I do. Let's roll on. Ooh, deep diving. Now, there's a lot of information on this slide, a lot. But I want you to take a moment. I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds, have a read through these questions. So I give you permission as my audience, as our audience, to have a read through. These are some open-ended questions I like to ask. And you can have your own. In fact, let's do a bit of an exercise. Have a read through this. There's some comments in the chat. Oliver, Simon says, put your hand on your head from Santa. Kahoot's pretty cool as well from Zandra. So I'd like, have a read through these. Let's take 30 seconds of quiet time. Have a read through these and then type in the chat some of your favorite open-ended questions you use to stimulate conversation. I'd love to hear from you. All right, who's got some open-ended questions? What are your favorites? Throw them in the chat. You can cut and paste it from the screen if you want, if that's possible. But we'd love to hear what some of our favorite open-ended questions are from our audience. We'll get a few of those and then we might roll on to some of our more practical exercise. I'm going to use with my students. My pleasure. Yeah, thank you, Zandra. I've got more. There's a couple of pages of these. I'll send them out. What made that successful, Catherine? Yeah, I love that. Love that. Love that a lot. How did that make you feel? Yeah, good. Do you have an interesting, memorable story? I like to ask, what were the highlights of your day? Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. I ask my kids that before we go to bed. Every night we do a little debrief. Winners debrief more than the average. I promise you now, I'm a huge Formula One fan and a massive sports fan. There is not a top-level sports person in the history of modern sport that doesn't watch replays of their games, matches, or races afterwards. Guarantee it. Where will this take you with your next direction? Parental debrief, yes. Yeah, but just try to sit down with my kids at night before they go to bed and say, how was your day? You know, most of the times they say good. Okay, well, my next question is always, what was good about it? You know, this, that, and the other. In fact, I give my daughter, she plays pretty serious, shall we say, tennis. She did the coin toss, actually, at the Australian Open final this year, the women's coin toss. Scarlett, our little 11-year-old, did the coin toss down there. And so we debrief quite a bit about her after her matches. She plays almost every day in tennis, and I've got this stamp which has got, you know, what did you learn today? What are you most proud of? What are you going to be better at tomorrow? What are you going to do differently? You know, what questions, just to get you thinking about, well, what do I want to do tomorrow? What am I proud of? Because so often as humans, we achieve the most amazing things, but we don't think about it. And I know we've pivoted more from like life speaking coaching to life coaching, but that's the approach I take with my kids anyway. Works really, really well. So there's a few more of these questions. We'll send them out, as I mentioned, in the pack afterwards. And for those that use Chat GPT, if you don't, I highly recommend it. Jump on there and type top 20 open-ended questions for conversation. It will come up and they'll be amazing. Some you won't like, some you will. But if you start any question with what or how or why is an interesting one. Why is it interesting? There's a great book I highly recommend each and every one of you read. And I'm going to type it in the chat. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Sorry for typing this while we speak. And my typing's a bit off there. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I think my typing's a bit dodgy, but Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Great book on negotiation. And he talks about the why question. No, I agree. It's very hard to ask a why question without sounding like you're sort of being a bit critical or challenging. Like, why did you do that? Because that can come across the wrong way. But you can preface that to Sahar's question, like, I'm really fascinated by this. Like, why did you think this happened? And because you say it with a positive voice and a real positive frame of mind and positive body language, it's not going to come across as critical. And that gets back to our written. If someone just reads that, why did you do this? That could be misconstrued as critical, as opposed to, wow, I really want to know why you did this. Like, that's really fascinating. Tell me more. Rob writes a great book. I've read that one. Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorites. So I'll send you more of these questions out as well. Why questions are my favorite? Sometimes people answer defensively. Yeah, you're exactly right. Can you please send that reference to everyone? Yeah, Lucy, the book, it's in the chat. It's about 5 comments up. Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss is the name. And I'm sure Maha and the team will write that down. Any books that I mentioned, we'll make sure we send you some bullet points, because I do drop a few. I read a bit, I do love Audible. Not paid by them, but it's really cool. Like you're doing the housework, you're listening to books. It's awesome. All right. The delivery. This is where the rubber hits the road, where the feet hit the track, where we start to build momentum. All right. Let's talk about presenting virtually. Now, there's a bit on here. But let's go through these one by one. Now, imagine if I'd written what I wanted to say in words. It's going to be very difficult. So if you ever can, use pictures instead of words. Lots of words. Top left. Next lesson, if you've got a busy slide like this, and it's not that busy, let's face it, there's 9 photos, but there is 9 pictures. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm the shepherd. So on the top left, we can see a battery with energy. And that's how I highly recommend you present a slide with a lot of information. Now, if I can just draw your attention to the right-hand side at the top of the slide, you'll see X. All of a sudden, the audience's eyes have all gone there. And you've got, as opposed to them trying to work out what you're talking about, because if the audience is trying to work out what you're talking about, they can't absorb your key message because they're so confused trying to find out where you are on the slide, or you might be giving handouts if you're chairing a meeting or something like that. So take them on a journey, and that journey includes a journey through the slide. On the top left, you can see energy. When you're presenting virtually, it is really, really important to bring the energy. Now, I know we've all got a natural range of energy that we behave within, and you can imagine I'm kind of somewhere up here. Some people are lower, some people are even higher than me. But when you're presenting virtually, you do need to explode onto that screen. Hi, it's great to be here. I'm so excited for today. The audience is going to go, whoa, strap yourself in, as opposed to, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's please go. Again, everyone's got a natural range, but I'd highly recommend get to the top or go above your natural range just to bring them in at the start. Let's go to the middle here. Now, we've got an individual here who is looking at his camera, but you can't really see his face. And if people can't see your face, how's this person going to influence them? But if he changes his lighting to be in front of him, all of a sudden you can see his face. Now that's the same photo, but the lighting has just changed. And now you can see his face. You can see his facial expression, his happiness in his eyes, his curiosity. So when he asks you a why question, it's curious, it's not attacking. Make sure you've got good lighting. We'll talk about that in a minute. On the right-hand side at the top, we've got 2 people shaking hands. Now, this meeting is too big for breakouts or meet and greets. But if you are meeting virtually in a smaller forum and you can break people out, you can say, it's time for our power networking session where you're going to meet and greet another delegate, break them out for 2 or 3 minutes in groups of 2 or 3, get them meeting and greeting. It changes things totally up. We are back on the left-hand side in the middle of the slide. There's a camera there. All right. There's a few commandments of the camera. The first one is you need to have it on. So have your cameras on in a meeting. The second one is you need to have it at eye level. And the third one is look at it. So have it on, have it at eye level, and look at it. Now, laptops are terrible for this because your laptop sits on the desk. My laptop right now in this meeting is sitting on 650 grams of Gold Selection coffee to get it up to height, because I'm in my mobile studio. My home studio's got a huge screen on those screen movie thingies, so I can adjust it. But this one, I've lifted my laptop up to be at exactly my height. Now, I've actually got a webcam, which is above my laptop because the webcam's better quality, but that means I can look down at my slides and I'm almost looking at the webcam. Now, otherwise I'd be looking down here at my slides where I'm kind of just ducking down and up. The other thing is, if your camera's too low from the top of your laptop on the desk, which mostly it is, it's going to be looking up your nose. So you're kind of presenting like that, which is not a good view. So have it at eye level, look at it, and have it on. That's really important from a camera perspective. Middle, right in the middle, timing. Think about the timing of your presentation. The school teachers would know this as well. You've got to break your lessons up at some stage because the students or your meeting attendees will just lose focus. And that's even more important virtually. Like Barack Obama couldn't keep someone's attention for 90 minutes just talking at a screen, but he probably could keep most of the audience in an auditorium because he's there, he's got the energy of the room. Engagement and interaction on the right-hand side in the middle, we've spoken about that. The passport photo, bottom left, that interesting looking chap, looks a bit like Liam Hemsworth. Make sure that you're framed quite well when it comes to how you present. My mother-in-law famously used to have her camera always like that. So all you could see was the top of her head. And I felt so bad. And she was in Eastern Europe. But make sure you're framed really well. Because again, if people can't see your face, it's going to be really hard for them to influence you. In the middle, note-taking, and encourage your audiences to get engaged and type things like we're doing. And then names. As I said before, use people's names. They will love you for it. They will love you for it. And it brings the engagement as well. All right. This is lighting, 3-point lighting. Now, again, you can Google 3-point lighting. A lighting setup like this from Amazon will cost you like $50. I kid you not, $50. For a key light off to one side, a fill light, you don't even need the backlight, to be honest, but at least have the lighting from you. Now, if you don't have that, that's fine. If you've got a bright light source from an open window, that's great. Just make sure you're facing the window and the window is not behind you, because if the window is behind you, your face will be quite dark and you look like that individual we have seen before. The basic premise of light is have it in front of you. Meeting rooms can sometimes be terrible, another hot tip, because the light's coming from above. Or if you've got to stand up and present and give ad hoc presentations like a stand up at work or so on and so forth, have a quick look up. See where the lights are. If there's really bright lights in front of or on top of you, take a step back if you can. Make sure you don't trip over anything, check behind you, but take a step back and then the light will sort of be shining on your face and then people can see you better, as opposed to having lots of light from above. It's going to make it difficult. All right. The format or the medium is something to consider as well. Slides, handouts, we've spoken a little bit about that. But as we said today, and as I've said a few times, you will get these slides. Say that very early on if you're going to hand them out, and that puts the audience's mind at ease. Format and medium, I'll talk a bit about that, but we don't have too much time. For that one, that is a case of, well, are you going to be on a panel? Are you going to be delivering a keynote? Is it going to be a meeting? Is it going to be a one-on-one? Understand the format of the meeting, because that will help you define how you're going to deliver it. Think about how long you've got, and then preparation is really important. We'll speak about that as well, and what tools will work. Tools, we're going to talk about speaking tools. So we're going to talk about that right now. All right. Nerves. For those that get nervous, and that's most of us, nerves. How to deal with nerves. Firstly, 4 square breathing is really cool. Really cool. What's 4 square breathing? In for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds. And I know that's not 4 seconds, but I'm just showing you. Out for 4 seconds and then do it again. This will lower your heart rate. It will calm you down and it will make you more likely to succeed because you're not panicked when you go on stage. It will create a virtuous cycle of calmness and happiness. Mindfulness and relaxing is another one. Close your eyes and be alone with your thoughts. If there are other people around you that are really nervous and you also need to speak and you're not really experienced, I would recommend, with respect, moving away from them. Because the last thing you need is everyone going, oh my God, I'm so nervous, because that's going to rub off on you. Now, if they're team members that you need to coach, share something like this with them. Bring them on a journey. Tap them on the shoulder and say, what is it that you're nervous about? Help me to understand that. Let's talk about this together. Bring them on a journey if you need to. Otherwise, get out of there and then wait for your time to shine. Affirmations. I'm an amazing speaker. I'm an amazing speaker. I don't get nervous. I don't get nervous. If you don't write affirmations, highly recommend it. Practice, we'll talk about that in a tick. Let's roll on. Ooh, last thing on preparing. If you're preparing for a speech in front of 1,000 people on a stage, standing up, then sitting at home on your own, behind the kitchen table practicing is not a bad start, but it's not as relevant as it should be. I'd get to the venue and make it realistic, which is the third point. And then if you can, video yourself doing it at the venue or standing up at home, because you're going to be standing up, and then review it. So recent, relevant, realistic, and reviewed. Make sure your practice is recent as well, because having prepared 6 years ago for a presentation doesn't help you for the one you're going to deliver tomorrow. I mean, it does a tiny bit, but really you need to, practice more recently. All right. Delivery toolkit number 1. Trusted advisor on the right. And on the left is a mobile phone. Sarah writes, there are 2 types of speakers, the ones that are nervous and the ones that lie. I'll be honest, I never get nervous before presenting or public speaking. Never. I've been nervous once, and it wasn't about presenting. It was, I did an awards night at Star City. There was 970 people, 71 awards. 71 awards, 970 people. So if you don't win an award, you're probably going to hit the cans. I was worried how I was going to control the audience. Yeah, I love public speaking. Like, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Every time I take the stage, speaking, it feels like Christmas morning. It's just absolutely amazing. Although sometimes when I'm standing, I have the weirdest thoughts. I'll be on stage in front of 1,000 people thinking, man, if I didn't like this, I'd be really worried right now. But yeah, I don't get nervous. I don't get nervous at all, which is weird. But I do prepare fastidiously. That is for sure. All right, so trusted advisor. Find yourself a trusted advisor. For those, what is a trusted advisor? It's someone that you can trust to advise you. Simple as that. Find someone in your team, someone that you work with. You might be in a project team, someone in your stand-up. Ask them and say, I'm going to practice my pace during this next presentation. We'll speak about pace in a minute. I'd love you to give me some feedback on that. Or record yourself. Oh, yes. Janan asks, can I tell you how I prepare? I will definitely do that in a second. Record yourself is an issue. Now, some meetings you can't record yourself in, and clearly after a job interview, but interestingly, a job interview, you can always get feedback. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I'll always send someone when I used to work, now I'm self-employed, when I used to go for job interviews, and I moved around a lot in my 22 years across City and Westpac, I'd always send an email, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you in the future. Now, if I didn't get the job, I'd always go back and say, thank you so much for the opportunity. Was there one or two things that I could have done better? Now, here's an interesting thing about feedback. And Maya, let's take a note. I'll send this question out afterwards. But don't ask, have you got any feedback for me? Because that's very personal. I prefer to ask, and Brian Hartzer, who was the CEO of Westpac, he's got a great book called The Leadership Star. There's another book. I'm just going to write that down. Leadership Star book. Brian would say, have you seen me do something or not do something that you think I could have done better? And I think that's a beautiful way to ask for feedback. Have you seen me do something or not do something you think I could have done better? I think that's a great way to present, because it takes the feedback away from you and brings it onto your behavior, onto the behavior, which is less personal. Now, to Janan's question, can you tell us more about your prep and how you prep? My process? 100%. For these training sessions, I run them, in particular, training sessions, I run them over 60 minutes or half a day. Generally, they're the lengths. So I've got a master presentation with a heap of slides, and there's clearly more for a 3-hour one than the ones we're going to go through today. And I'll think about, well, based on what I've spoken about with Charmaine and Maya and the team, what are really going to benefit alumni in terms of what I can deliver out of all the messages I can deliver. So the first thing is understanding the audience. Who are they? What are they going to need? The second thing is then going, right, well, I know my message and it's this big, but what are the key bits that I'm going to do? I don't rehearse too much for these, having delivered them so much and living it and breathing it. But for a conference, I'll put a lot of effort into understanding the keynote speakers, what their subjects are, and even preparing a thought-provoking introduction. So I did an event on the 8th of June, it was at Gold Coast and Gold Coast Convention Centre. And I wrote a poem to start that. And it had like 15 verses. I had 8 to start with. And then when I was rehearsing, I realized it was too quick. So I added more. I wrote it myself. And I must have rehearsed. And this was a big event for me because this was in front of Meetings and Events Australia. So it's basically the Meetings and Events Professionals of Australia. So how I prepared was I rehearsed that word for word. And I knew it off by heart. But then once I'd learnt it off by heart, my next suite of rehearsals is how was I going to deliver it? How was I going to do that with power? So the magic is always in the prep. 80 or 90% of the work I do before an event happens before I get there. On the day, you just deal with issues. Now, you might not have the luxury of that if you're chairing a meeting, but if you're going into a meeting or a job interview, for example, how I used to prepare for job interviews, I'd download 120, 130 behavioral interview questions. Tell us a time when you did this. Tell us a time when you dealt with that. Can you give us an example of this? And I'd go through my career and I'd remember those and write them down. Now, you don't want to seem rehearsed. But at the same time, you do want to remember the awesome stuff you've done to showcase yourself because you want the job. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. So preparation is the key. I hope that helps. As she writes, how to get feedback from work or projects you've completed. That's where retrospectives happen. One of the major things most people in projects don't do is A, celebrate success when they finished it, and B, get everyone together to say, what did we do well? What do we need to do more of? What do we need to stop, start, continue? Be really specific, especially if it's a project. And you should be having retros throughout the project as well. All right, let's move on. All right. Now, these are some of the tips. These are some of the tips that I'll invite you to get your phone out. We've got about 10 minutes to go. We're going to have Q&A after this, but we'll do some tips and then we'll bring it in for Q&A. Now, posture's the first one. Posture's the first one. People ask me, well, how should you stand when you're presenting? Well, I highly recommend you do not stand like these people. We've got the prince here, well, he's now the king, mate with his arms crossed. When your arms are crossed, you're compressing your diaphragm. The way your voice works is your lungs squeeze out air. It goes out your throat, past your vocal cords, through your mouth and out into the world as your voice. If you are making yourself smaller, and we do that when we get nervous, it makes it really hard to project your voice. You don't want to be like the defender or Daddy Cool here with his hands in front of him or in his pocket. How I recommend you stand is like this. Feet shoulder width apart, nice and balanced. Here's me from a few events as well. If you imagine you walked up to one of these people and pushed them gently on the shoulder, they wouldn't fall over because they're quite balanced. Their hands are also in quite a neutral position, so you can use your hands as well. So that's how I recommend you stand. How you sit, I wouldn't sit like this. One caveat is if you're in a one-on-one or you're in a small meeting, you do want to mimic the people, their body language that you're presenting to or trying to connect with. I'd sit like that, quite upright. Now, this individual on the right-hand side of the slide, that is exactly how I sit in an important meeting. You can kind of see my feet in this meeting too. I've got one foot back. The other one is sort of straight up and down. My shoulders are back, my chest is out, and I'm ready to stand and deliver. On the other side of this photo is actually Vladimir Putin, but I cut it out because clearly that's just not appropriate anymore. But you can see why she's in a really important meeting. I don't know who this individual is, clearly quite a senior minister within his government. But when I'm presenting to boards or when I was presenting to executive committees in my banking career, this is always how I would sit, always, especially because most times you're going to be the youngest person or the most junior person in the room. So you always need to be at attention, definitely. Ooh, now here's an interesting, I'm just going to open up the chat. I want you to type some observations that you see of this individual on the right. He's sitting to my left in the photo. He's probably on the right of his screen. What do you notice about him, the way he's sitting? Just throw it in the chat and call it out. Zendra writes, what to wear? I always wear a suit and tie when I'm hosting, always. Always, always, always. Even now, virtual. That's what I do. But again, speak to the client and understand what sort of audience it is. So I would always rather rock up with a tie and suit. Now, for the ladies in the audience, one call out here. Imagine these seats, and let's just go back a slide here. Say that individual there. Now that I know that person really well. They're comfortable sitting like that on a skirt on a stage, but you might not be, and that's okay. But you need to think about, well, okay, what am I going to wear? Based on the question that was asked around from Zendra, what am I going to wear that's going to make me comfortable? Now, for a woman in a skirt, that might be uncomfortable. This individual's okay, and that's fine. But consider what you need to wear, because you might feel more comfortable in pants in that situation, and that's perfectly okay as well. Relaxed, confident, and there's some really interesting comments there. Mimicking you, yeah, I think I was mimicking him, or we were mimicking each other. Is he speaking to the audience? He is. He's kind of in thought there. He's talking about, I think I asked him quite a technical question at that point. The other thing is, look what's in his hand. A notebook. Nothing wrong with that, is there? So many people say, well, what happens when I go on stage? And if I forget, take a notebook. That's a little A5 moleskin. Highly recommend it. Stay away from pieces of paper, because if you're nervous and shaking, that paper is going to oscillate and make it look worse. But there's nothing wrong with that at all. So they're the first few tips in our tool: posture, eye contact, and energy. We're going to race through these. Not quickly, but deliberately. Now, these are three amigos, and they're really, really important. Pace, volume, and silence. Nothing wrong with a bit of silence in your presentation. If you've got something really important to say, slow down and stop. Versus if you've got something really important to say, slow down and stop. And my next point is, you need to let it hang. If you're in a meeting or if you're in a job and even said something really important, this is super important. I'm really passionate about this, and this is why. That's power. Silence also gives people a chance to catch up. It also gives the introverts, and I'm quite extroverted, as you can imagine, but I'm familiar with working with introverts. Extroverts, we think silence is a time for us to speak. It's not. It's time for the introverts to think and contribute. Think about that. All right. Tone, inflection, and filler words. And I'm going to send these out as well, so you'll have a list of them, and we'll keep the session open. I know we've got 6 minutes to go. We'll keep the session open afterwards for Q&A as well. Plus, you'll get these in an abridged format. Tone is really important. Each of us have a natural range of energy, like I said before. We've also got a natural range of tone. Our tone goes up, it goes down. It's up and down and around. make sure you change tone as you speak. But one word of caution, and I see this more in ladies than I do in men, don't inflect at the end of every sentence, because it'll turn every sentence into a question. When you're not asking a question, you're just doing a statement. And it sounds like it's really annoying. So make sure you control your tone and don't inflect it at the end of every sentence, because it turns it into a question when it's not. Inflection is interesting. There's an example on that. And filler words. There's two things I want you to take away from today's prezzo. One, speaking is a journey. Two, it's just communication is just sending a message from one person to the other. But if you change one thing about your presenting, that is the biggest pound for pound tip. If you do it, it's this. So next, we're going to talk about filler words. So filler words are when you say, now, I was at a steerco once at a bank, a $40 million project, and this is a true story. The leader of this project said 127 times in the first 15 minutes of the meeting. And it was an hour meeting or a half an hour meeting. I stopped counting after that. So imagine how hard it made it to get those messages through with all the noise in that. And to the team at WSU, don't play that little bit back there as the advertisement for this session, because that's a terrible way to present. So we'll keep it going. But now, how to stop filler words. This is where group exercises help. Present in a group of 3 or 4 people, do your speech. Every time someone says a filler word, get the other people to clap. And then it becomes an unknown known. It becomes a known known as opposed to an unknown unknown. Or record yourself back and you'll be surprised. Oh my God, I say so. We generally do it when we're thinking or between sentences. Nothing wrong with a bit of silence. Drop filler words. All right. Now let's go to some general tips, and then we're gonna set some goals. And this is where it's over to you. We spoke about this at a high level before. Be yourself. You got to be you. Now I know we've got a natural range of energy, we've got a natural range of tone, but you can always be the best version of that person, or the most appropriate for your situation. But you do need to be you. You might look at a Barack Obama speech and go, wow, he's really this, he's really that. And you can attempt to emulate that and change yourself and go on your speaking journey toward that. And that's perfect. But if you feel like this isn't me, and that isn't just you outside your comfort zone, but you're just doing it in a manner that's not you, you feel disingenuous, then I'd ask you to speak to your trusted advisor, to your coach, to your mentors, to your people in your networking and say, is this feeling normal? Because maybe you're just outside your comfort zone, but maybe you're doing something maybe you shouldn't be doing. Thanking is an interesting one. If someone's bestowed upon you a portion of their life, i.e. their attention, say thanks. It's also a really nice cue that the presentation's over. And thank you. Nerves, we've spoken about that. Word for word and bullets. I did see a comment in the chat about that. When I do conferences, my run sheet for a 2-day conference will be 65, 70 pages long. It has got everything I want to say, everything. And it's been written. It takes a few days to write. And that's another way how I prepare as well, back to the question earlier, because on the day, there's so many things going through my brain in terms of how to run the event. What's the timing? Who's next? Where's my next speaker? Has someone canceled? What's the audience doing? Are they low on energy? I just read out with inflection and with power, but I read word for word what I'm going to do. Bullet points are great. And today I've used bullet points because I'm quite familiar with this. But if you're doing bullet points in a time-bound manner, you can sort of go over from that perspective. All right, we're going to take 30 seconds. Here's some of the things we've gone through today, some of the tips. I'd love you to write down 1 or 2 that you're going to choose as goals for you to focus on over the next few weeks, over the next month or so, when it comes to presenting. I'd love that. Set a few goals. We're going to take 30 seconds, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. All right, and again, you'll get these slides as well. Now, speaking's a journey. Remember that. You're on it. Communication, it's just one person sending a message to the other. We spoke about the 3 elements of speaking. You've set some goals. Enjoy the journey. Be brave. Happy to take any questions. Luke Hannan's my name. Ping me a note on LinkedIn. Connect with me. Send me your goals. Would love to hear from each and every one of you. And now, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and happy to open it for Q&A. Yes, the presentation slides will be shared for further reference. Xandro is focusing on pace, volume, and silence. Thank you, David. It's been an absolute pleasure. Throw any questions you've got in the chat. Ping me a note on LinkedIn. Would love to get 400 connections on LinkedIn. or at least a few. So drop me a note. Sarah, I like that question. What's been your most memorable speaking moment? Oh, wow. That's a big question. I've never been asked that before. I would have to say, as an event professional, you're only as good as your last event. So I'd say wrapping up, this one's been a good one. And if you've got to drop off, I know we're on time, that's fine. But I did that meetings and events one recently was pretty special, that poem, because that was a really important audience for me. And it was my 407th event, but it was super important. Probably speaking at my dad's funeral was another one as well. That was pretty cool. Presenting at my kid's school was another pretty cool one. That was pretty awesome. Is there a guide to becoming a stand-up comedian? Ashir, there is. It's not something I do, but I could probably connect you with that. How can I negotiate a corporate salary and a hire? Jay, that's why you have to read Never Split the Difference, my friend, but that's a great question. Do you have a speaking horror story that you can share from Kelly Whitney? Ooh, probably just speakers. And I'm going to hang around for the next 10 or so minutes, so don't stress. I don't know we're on time, but if you've got to go, you've got to go, that's fine. But we'll still be here, Charmaine. I suspect that's okay. We'll keep the room open for a bit. Yeah, absolutely. Mostly, okay, so two things come to mind. One, I had a speaker fall through a stage once. And I know that sounds random, but ladies, when you're presenting on a stage, the temporary stages, if you've got those really skinny high heels, be careful, because sometimes they don't gaffer tape the gaps together. And this individual, her foot fell through the stage, slipped through, and then she fell over into a seat, luckily, because there was a panel straight after her. So, of course, as an MC, I'm paying attention. I hear this thud. I look straight up, right? I'm straight on stage. Has she passed out? Has she not? So in that case, it was just her shoe. Now, the funny thing is, I've got a pretty cool network of MCs, and one of them told me a story about how someone fell through a stage. And as I mentioned before, you've got to address the elephant in the room. Everyone knows this person has just fallen over in front of 1,000 people. They've all seen it. And so they said, it's just a stage she's going through. And I thought, I've got to use that one day. So once she was okay, I was like, ladies and gentlemen, it's okay. It's just a stage she's going through. Everyone had a good laugh. We addressed the elephant in the room, and then she went on with the presentation. So that's probably one horror story. The next one is the jokes. Oh, when you crack jokes, 99 times out of 100, you're going to lose the audience. So really steer clear of humor. Probably the next one is things will go wrong. Your slides will get lost. Your presentation's going to get mumbled up. You might drop your pages. No matter what happens, just soldier on, and remember how awesome that step in your speaking journey is going to be when you can come back from that. Probably one of the most horror stories I had was when I was horrendously sick pre-COVID. So it wasn't COVID. It was a belly bug. I was in bed all day, and I had to do this gig at night. And literally, I was like at the venue, to the toilet, back to the venue, did my speech, to the toilet. And I thought, you know what? And that's probably not cool now in COVID times, right? But I thought, if I can get through that, I wash my hands a lot. If I can get through that, I can get through anything. So that's probably some interesting horror stories there. Yes, there are stand-up courses at Sheer. Let's have a look. Higher salary we've spoken about. Can we get the recording? Yes, we will. Is it? It is the best. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the amazing feedback as well. It's messages to my heart with my presentation. Yeah, Pecha Kucha. I've done that once. Pecha Kucha, I think it's 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide. That's pretty cool. From Xandra, Pecha Kucha School. I did that once at uni. Thank you very much. Use this at school. Great advice. You're most welcome. What do you do if you accidentally miss a point? Ooh, Serena, that's a good question. That's a ripper. If it's your key takeaway, I'm assuming it's come out very early on and it's been constant throughout, so it wouldn't be an issue. In that case, I would answer the question with, it depends. And it depends on this. If you're at a board meeting and you're asking for a key decision, I'd probably try and keep it really simple anyway. But if you've forgotten something that's really important, I'd bring it up. I had a great leader say to me once, Luke, if you have a problem, i.e. the problem being you forgot to tell us something important. So if you have a problem and you tell us about it today, it's our problem. If you tell us about it tomorrow, it's your problem. And if you tell me anytime after that, then you are the problem. So the point there is, if you have a problem or if you forgot something, I'd bring it up. If it's really important, I'd bring it up, Serena, straight away. And so, look, guys, I know we've just made a decision. I'm terribly sorry. I forgot to mention one thing. This is really important. Does that change our decision? Assuming they've already approved or declined what you wanted. And then move on. If it's not important, like there's plenty more stuff I could have gone through today and the audience energy was great and you feel they got a lot out of it and they're nodding and stuff like that, I would let it go, because you don't want to kill that momentum. Like you've had a really strong finish, the audience is going crazy, it's not that important, I'd let it go. So I hope that answers your question. It's probably an it depends. Yeah, if it's important and it's a board one, I'd go back, because you're going to have to anyway. If it's not, send it in the abridged notes and so on and so forth. Oh, yeah, this is a good question from Nalika. I get this one a bit as well. What would you do if the audience try to engage as an argumentative or a different view? Now, I would channel my inner Jordan Peterson, and whether you like him or not, and this is not the view of the uni or anything, it's just the way he approaches life is amazing, in that it's, look, I've got a really strong point of view, and you know, you've got a different point of view. Well, let me try and understand your point of view, because you might teach me something that helps me reframe the manner in which I view life. So the answer to your question, I would try and embrace it. There's a big caveat on that. If it becomes disrespectful, I'd call it out then and there. Don't ever get put down by someone. Don't let them stand over you, even though you're on stage. I'd call that out then and there. If someone starts being argumentative and disrespectful, I'd literally say, can we please pause? Because I'm loving your energy and I think there's some great points here, but let's keep it respectful, please, because I'd love to furnish you with information. I'd love to enter into this conversation with you. We're all adults here. We can talk about whatever you want, whatever you want. There's no inappropriate topics because we're all adults. We can have an adult conversation, but let's please keep it on that level. So I hope that, Nalika, answers the question. I'm just going to quickly skim and scan the chat to see if I may have glossed over any other questions, because there's so many amazing ones in here. And look, if I do miss it, you have got my details, and I'm sure the WSU team can connect us afterwards. Well, thank you all once again for joining. It has been a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us. Charmaine, I might pass back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Luke, on behalf of Western Sydney. I know I have definitely learned a lot. Hang on, I'm just going to fix my posture. Oh, that's my attempt at humour there. So I'm going to stop that. As Luke has mentioned, if you have any additional questions, please contact us at alumni@westernsydney.edu.au, but we will be in touch with everyone that has registered within the next couple of days with some follow-up resources and, of course, a recording of this. So thanks, everyone, for attending, and good night.